If you give me a movie that works well as a warm-up during my years-long countdown to Avatar 3, I'm automatically going to give it a boost when I score it. First we had Amrita from the Brains of Tulkuns, then we had the Tales of Creepers, and now we have unicorn horns? Along with other parts of them.
Whatever it is, it seems to be the cure for cancer.
Cancer? That's the biggest one.
Hi, I'm LadyJenevia, and on my channel I talk about entertainment media. Today I'm going to be reviewing Death of a Unicorn. The first section has minimal spoilers, or at least I will talk about what's been shared in the trailer as well as the logline, so maybe that's kind of a lot of information, but if you're watching this review, I'm assuming you already have an interest in the film. Then we will follow that up with a spoiler section where I can talk about as many specifics as I'd like. If all you want to know is my score and you don't already know it because you don't follow me on Letterboxd, I gave it a 4.1 out of 5. Thematically, it's definitely my kind of movie. It's quite funny and generally speaking provoked a lot of audible reactions from me. And as far as critiques go, there's one main thing I disagree with about the ending and a few small nitpicks, but definitely overall I lean far more in the direction of really liking it. Now here is the premise, and admittedly it kind of shares a lot about the film, but if this is the marketing choice they've gone with, then we are free to talk about those things. Elliot Kinter and his teenage daughter Ridley accidentally hit a unicorn while en route to a crisis management summit with Elliot's boss, Odell Leopold, and his family. The Leopolds seize the unicorn, and their scientists discover that the creature is endowed with supernaturally curative properties, which the Leopolds seek to exploit. However, as they delve deeper into their research, the unicorn's parents arrive and begin to slaughter one by one those involved in the exploitation of their dead foal. Being that the logline and the trailer present all of this information about the film's story, that gives me a bit more room to elaborate on my feedback in this section. I won't tell you the issue I have with the ending until the spoiler section, but here are some of my smaller nitpicks that caused me to slightly lower my overall score. At the very beginning, when they first encounter the unicorn, they don't just accidentally hit the unicorn with their car, they also enact other violence on it, and even though the unicorns are all VFX generated, to me it still came across as excessive and distasteful, particularly when you're pushing really hard to convey this thematic messaging about how awful it is to be cruel to animals and exploit them for your own financial gain. It feels even more in poor taste to show as much violence as you did towards them. Maybe the people making this film just thought that it would be fine because it's all VFX, but I'm being asked to emotionally invest in the well-being of unicorns. It takes very little to get me invested in animals in films anyway. I have only seen the Tulkun hunting scene in Avatar: The Way of Water one time, and I saw that film 15 times at the cinema. But watching that scene was so traumatizing that once was enough. I didn't need to see it again. That film is over 3 hours long, so every time I would go to rewatch it, that was where I would take a bathroom break so that I wouldn't have to rewatch the Tulkun hunting scene. Are Tulkuns real? No. But whales are. Are unicorns real? No, but horses are. Now, this is the type of thing that's very subjective. Not everyone is going to have the same level of sensitivities to the same things. So you might watch the film and not even blink at this violence, but I am merely sharing my perspective because this is my review. Another nitpick I had was that the level of quality for the unicorn VFX felt a bit inconsistent at times. Now, some shots I thought looked perfectly fine, but some of the other shots I couldn't help but feel were a bit lacking. But to be fair to Death of a Unicorn, a large part of this film's appeal is the thematic overlap with James Cameron's Avatar films, because I love those. And those films are at the absolute forefront of breaking new ground in the technology and art of VFX, so there probably is a lingering bias floating around in my brain where it's very hard for me to not draw multiple comparisons between the two. But those were my only noteworthy nitpicks apart from the ending, so let's get into everything else, which consisted of things that I largely enjoyed. Jenna Ortega's character Ridley, I absolutely loved her. I loved everything about her. She was the perfect heroic lead to get emotionally invested in and root for. She was one of the only ones who had any sense in this movie. Almost everyone else, I wanted the unicorns to get rid of them in a slasher movie serial killer-like fashion. If you've seen Jenna Ortega in almost any of her past jobs, you will know how emotionally expressive of an actor she is, and she has some really good moments to put those skills to good use in this. She is the one that's on the side of the unicorns, and she advocates for them, so naturally, I was on the same side as her for the entire film. Her father, Elliot, is on this work trip to meet with the Leopolds. The patriarch of the family is his boss, Odell, played by Richard E. Grant, aka the swinger vampire father from The Little Vampire. We also meet Odell's wife, Belinda, played by Téa Leoni, and their son, Shepard, played by Will Poulter. The Leopold family is the main vehicle for the film's dark comedic elements. These characters exist to satirize the status quo, as well as the architects and benefactors of systemic inequality. You can apply that satirical perspective to any number of examples of that concept. Private healthcare, rich people using charity and other humanitarian causes as a method of performing empathy that they don't actually have. The list goes on and on. All three characters have their fair share of moments for me to get angry at them, but they're also very funny to watch. It's the writing, but it's also the performances themselves. Will Poulter in particular, his line delivery in this is unhinged in the best way possible. I'm just going to give an example which does entail spoiling one of his lines, but doing so doesn't involve a major plot spoiler, so I've made the executive decision to include it in this section as an example of what I'm talking about. There is a part of the film where he's advising someone to print some images out on large paper, and the instruction he gives is matte paper. Gloss is gauche. Now, if that line doesn't sound hilarious, I promise you it is very funny when Will Poulter says it. This entire family made me want to have a wheelbarrow of tomatoes nearby, and then I could just start throwing them, one right after the other, but in a way that fed into my enjoyment of the film because they're the villains. You want to have someone to root against in a story like this. I already explained how I had problems with the violence at the very beginning of the film against the unicorn baby, but when the violence starts being dished out against any and all participants in this financial scheme to harvest the body, I was all too happy to pop popcorn and enjoy the show of righteous violence being enacted against anyone and everyone involved in that scheme. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. There's also an interesting, engaging development of the lore of the unicorns in a way that enriches the overall story and the themes being pushed. It was also a pleasant surprise when the credits rolled and I discovered that Larry Fong was the film's DP, so am I surprised that the overall look of the film was mostly excellent? Not really, because that man is very capable at doing his job. One other honorable mention I will bestow is on Anthony Carrigan, who plays the Leopold family's butler named Griff. It's a bit more of an understated role, but he plays really well into the overall dynamic. The Leopolds are just cartoonishly evil. They're all very loud and big personalities, so the humor and other dimension that Griff brings to the overall dynamic works to the film's benefit. The pull quote I shared after the press screening was, "Smart and wickedly funny, Death of a Unicorn is a wildly entertaining battle of man versus nature."
Aren't you the most magnificent thing?
But now let me get into more of these plot spoilers. So Elliot brings his daughter Ridley to the Leopold family mansion, or whatever you would like to call it, because Elliot is in a position to potentially sign on to help manage the Leopold family estate because Elliot's boss Odell has terminal cancer. Ridley was brought along because the Leopold family wanted to really get to know him and his family in order to determine whether or not he's the right man for this job. It's very quickly established that Elliot is a widow. The loss of Ridley's mother bears a huge weight on both of them, their relationship, and the various decisions that each of them make in these extraordinary circumstances involving the unicorns. Elliot is desperate to secure this job because he wants to get a large amount of money so that he and Ridley will be financially set and any and all of her needs will be met, or at least the needs that require money. So when Elliot hits the baby unicorn in the road, part of the reason why he was distracted is because he has allergies, so he was sneezing and had a bunch of tissues he was dealing with. And when you first meet Ridley, she has some acne on her cheeks. So after they first encounter the unicorn that Elliot hit with his car, the first indication they get that the unicorn has healing powers is the fact that the blood spray from the unicorn got on both of their faces, and in the process, it got rid of Ridley's acne, it fixed Elliot's allergies, and it also fixed his vision so he no longer needs to wear glasses. Upon realizing that, they are too careless in sharing this information out loud, and of course these sharks, the Leopold family, they pounce and want to use it themselves or sell it off to the highest bidder. Ridley forms this connection to the baby unicorn when she first approaches it in the road, and its horn begins to light up, and she holds onto it and has a vision that doesn't get explained until the end, and I'm not even going to explain it in this video because I would rather you go and watch the film and experience that revelation by way of Jenna Ortega delivering it, because it is very compelling coming from her. But her father, Elliot, attacks the baby unicorn and bludgeons it with a tire iron while she's still holding onto the horn and having this vision because he doesn't know what's going on, and you know, the human species has a propensity for violence.
Ugh.
I strongly dislike that they show the tire iron making direct contact with it. It's a baby. I don't care if it's VFX. It's integral to the entire story to get emotionally invested in this baby unicorn, and I did. You could have just as easily filmed Paul Rudd swinging his arms, and then him and Jenna Ortega could get splattered with unicorn blood without showing me the tire iron making direct contact. I'm of the opinion that it was distasteful, and that did overall lower my score. That's not the only excessive, fully visible violence done to the baby unicorn at the beginning of the film. That, along with the issue I had with the ending, was enough to lower my overall score to such an extent that this is less likely to stay in my top 10 by the end of 2025. There are 3 films right now that I more or less know are going to stay in my top 10 by the end of the year. Those are Ne 2, Freaky Tales, which I've already filmed my review of, that's coming up next, and Mickey 17, which I have already published my video review of. The subject matter, the themes, the commentary, and so many strong performances, and all of the times this film made me laugh, this could have locked a spot in my top 10, but I don't like that you were overly messing with baby unicorn like that, to where you're showing it to me to that degree. Even James Cameron had the good enough sense to not show the baby Tulkun being killed. You see the mother be hunted and killed. You see the baby coming up and nuzzling her immediately after, which was a horrific emotional knife twist. And then later on, when the Metcaina show up, the baby is no longer alive. We know what happened. James Cameron knows that we are more than capable of deducing that those demonic sky people harvested the baby Tulkun for its Amrita. It doesn't mean we needed to watch it happen. One time was more than enough. But let me explain the thing I dislike about the ending, and then we can just bask in more of the spoilers of various aspects that I really liked about this film. Throughout more or less the entire film, Ridley is begging her father to stop this. She is fighting to save these unicorns. She is researching deep into history to learn about the lore of unicorns. Girl is over here ready to present an entire dissertation on unicorns, and all she does in this movie is be right. And her annoying scoung of a father refuses to listen to her. It's insufferable. Now, I understand what a character arc is, so if you would like to start his character at a place of being wrong so that he may learn and transform and find redemption in the end, fine. But it feels like 90% of this movie, he's wrong. She gives him a ridiculous amount of opportunities to change, to grow, to be a better man, but Robbie Williams, he is not. By the time he finally decides to do the right thing, it feels very too little too late. He gets mortally wounded and is dead for all of 5 seconds before the unicorns decide to save him, only because they like Ridley, and they know she's actually a good person with a good heart, and they can sense that because they're magic. This man needed to stay dead. I was so upset when they resurrected him. You don't get to be a steaming pile of garbage for most of the movie and then do one decent thing and be magically resurrected from the dead. Let him die. If he dies, he dies. The trope is called Final Girl, not Final Girl and her loser father. Keep him dead. Have you all seen Manon des Sorts? If you haven't, you should, because it's excellent, but if you've never seen it, you need to make sure that you watch Jean de Florette first, because that's a duology. Without giving specifics, there is a bad person who is in both movies, who at the end of the second film realizes, oh, I shouldn't have done all of that. That was the wrong decision. But do they get to just say, oops, my bad, well, I know better now? No, they are left to suffer because they did bad things, and they must now live with the consequences of that. And you know what the consequences are for taking a tire iron to the skull of a helpless baby unicorn that you hit with your car? Death. And here's the thing about a film's ending. It's the last impression the audience leaves with. So even though there are dozens of other things and moments that I really love from Death of a Unicorn, I walked out of there going, I cannot believe they took the cowardly route of letting that awful man live. So yes, I don't know. If someone would like to write a rewrite of the ending on AO3, just let me know when it's up and I will enjoy that instead. But anyway, let me go through some of the details of things that I really loved about Death of a Unicorn. The commentary on class inequality, on the ways that the ultra wealthy are just depraved, nefarious. That's exactly how these people are. These villains are some of my favorite villains I will probably see all year. They're so memorable, they're awful, but also really funny. It's very enjoyable to root against them and finally get that payoff of watching each and every one of them meet their demise. And you know that one part of Death Becomes Her, when Helen keeps rewinding the footage of Madeline dying in one of her acting roles? That's going to be me. When Death of a Unicorn is released on physical media, digital, VOD, streaming, all of that, rewind, play it again. rewind, play it again. There are so many lines that they have that are very memorable, like this one part where Ridley is desperately trying to advocate for the well-being of these unicorns, and Belinda says something to her about how, I don't remember how the exact line went, but it was something along the lines of, it's okay, we're all friends here, you don't need to perform principles. And it made me just want to scream out loud because that's exactly who this family is. They have no actual principles or integrity or morality, empathy, anything like that. Whenever they get involved with charitable or humanitarian causes or organizations, it's entirely performative. And the details of these three characters in what you learn about them, the things they do and say or reveal about themselves, like for example, the family patriarch Odell talks about how he's done that disgusting trophy hunting. I think I wrote it down in my notes that he's listed lions, elephants, and great apes as examples of animals that he's hunted and killed purely for sport. The details for those three characters are just absolutely spot on, as are all three performances. They are horrible, they're the absolute worst, and I think all three of those actors need to be given flowers or chocolates, whatever type of thank you gift they would like to receive, because their work was excellent. Now, I already praised Jenna Ortega in the previous section, but I don't mind circling back to briefly reiterate it. She made it extremely easy to root for Ridley and to get invested in her overall well-being. Did all of you know that one of Will Poulter's next films is a Boots Riley film? Let me watch that immediately. I'm a Virgo was a bop. I already reviewed that on my channel, so I am ready for the next one. Anyway, if you've made it this far, make sure you go see Death of a Unicorn, because I saw it at an early press screening and I'm gonna go see it again opening weekend.
It's an opportunity for immortality.
We have a moral imperative to harvest every last one.
Demon! I will kill you as many times as I have to.